3 days ago, they said that they found some equipment to protect against weapons of mass destruction. And they tried to raise suspicions, saying why would the Iraqi soldiers would have such equipment. And they claim that the Iraqis know that the American forces do not use weapons of mass destruction. So why are they supplying the Iraqi soldiers with? Why do they have these equipment to protect against weapons of mass destruction? We want to expose their ways and their lies. They know that soldiers in war should be prepared for any situation that might arise. A soldier should be prepared, and the masks are part of these preparations. The Iraqi soldier is prepared and supplied with the latest, including a gas mask. This questioning is part of their psychological war that they were singing before, which the world despised them for, and are using for an excuse for their criminal behavior, and to claim that the Iraqis have such weapons of mass destruction, such as the administrators who talk in a way that is cheap. We want to clarify that these equipments for Iraqi soldiers is part of the regular routine way to prepare the soldiers. These equipment
صارت بهذا الشكل قياسية وصارت تقريبا دولية لأنه حالات
is an international standard equipment.
خاصة لما يكون مدافع عن بلده وحريته
This is
يتوقع من العدو الغاشم
expected that the enemy who is the aggressor could use anything of or such weapon. We know that the aggressors, the Americans and the British, that they might, because of frustrations and their defeat and the resistance that is going to increase day by day, we do not, it won't be strange that they would use, and they own such weapons, and they might use such and make some use of these weapons, and we want to warn them against that. These equipments are standards, and using lies for your psychological warfare is exposed by now. Also, is one of the generals, Myers, said yesterday across in the media, which was basic propaganda,
يعني تحول إلى البوق للدعاية وأنا أقول
and I say to him,
كان غير موفق
did not succeed,
لأنه اللي
and
جعله ينفضح
what he said
هو ما قال وزير دفاع
exposed his lies, because also what Rumsfeld said. Rumsfeld yesterday said in a crazy moment, said that the Iraqis are cutting the tongues of people and they're hitting and attacking people in the streets, and the government is shooting at people, and some their tongues were cut by the government so they cannot, so they would not talk. He must be crazy. He lost his mind. And I think he lost his mind because he has lost Richard Pearl, who is his right arm, his right hand, who is a well-known Zionist. I think that this hysteria that Defense Minister Rumsfeld was as a result that this gang, these vampires, they're starting to fall apart, this gang. And Rumsfeld wanted to distinguish himself in a different way, and he did not know that somebody like him should not be talking in that way. I think that this gang who wanted this war, and they are falling apart, and the resignation of Richard Pearl, the war criminal, is a proof for that. The third point, briefly, with intensifying the bombardment of Baghdad, American spokesman and British spokesman said that they are targeting government buildings, as if these buildings have no people in it, as if no citizens and civilians enter these government buildings. For example, planning ministry. Who goes in the planning ministry? Normal citizens go to do their business. The Ministry of Communication. Who goes there? As if when they want to bomb government buildings, as if this has no connection to the people. They hit the Ministry of Information, Ministry of Planning, the communication. We tell them that this illogical and rational talk, some of their spokesmen keep on telling the media in the name of the aggressors, the Americans and the British. This is unacceptable, and it is unaccepted. In these buildings are civilians that go there to do their business. These buildings, where is it located? Is it? These buildings are in the city. When they target these buildings, they also hit houses and homes next to these buildings. These buildings, wasn't it built by the Iraqis with their money and their work? To say that these buildings are just government buildings shows that they are bankrupt. Yesterday, the aggressors, the Americans, when they went towards the county of Wasat, they used a matter that is made of fiberglass to destroy the electricity plants. They started dropping this material on these plants, and as a result, the citizens did not have electricity in Wasat County. And our people need some time to clean the plants from this material. The casualties from the bombing of these war criminals as of last night, the bombardment of Baghdad caused 92 injuries, civilian. All of them were civilians. 92 injured and 7 martyred. And in Wasif, the criminal bombardment caused 9 injuries and 2 martyrs. And in Karbala, the criminal bombardment, American and British, caused 28 injured and 11 martyred. And in Basra, the criminal bombardment caused 12 injuries and 2 martyred. And as a result of this criminal bombardment on Najaf and using a lot of cluster bombs, there were 60 injured and 26 martyred. The total number of victims in Basra from the beginning of this aggression, American and British aggression, the total till this morning in Basra, in civilian neighborhood, the civilian casualties are the injured in Basra from the beginning of this aggression till this morning is 695 injured, and the number of the martyrs in Basra was 116 martyred. In Babel, yesterday only, the criminal bombardment caused injuries for 82 citizens and 26 martyred. In Ta'amim, the criminal bombardment caused 8 injured and 1 martyred. Yesterday, they were taught a lesson that they will never forget, that the increased number of the victims because of their aggression is 800 injured and 230 martyrs.
لا هذا تراكم هذا تجميع.
This is the total number.
لا هو العدد الإجمالي
This
إضافة
is
لأنه دائما في قتال
the total number to our best
مستمر.
information.
فهؤلاء المجرمون
These criminals,
نحن سنلاحقهم كمجرمي
we
حرب.
will pursue them as war criminals,
وسنلاحقهم بكل الوسائل.
and we will pursue them in
ومن
all
حقنا أن نلاحقهم
ways we
في كل
can,
مكان.
and we will pursue them everywhere.
مجرمو الحرب
These
الأمريكان
war criminals,
والبريطانيين
the Americans and the
ينبغي
British,
أن يلقنوا الدروس
need
التي
to be taught
تجعل البشرية
a
تتخلص
lesson
من شرورهم.
which may had humanity get rid of their evil.
العراقيون يقومون بذلك
The Iraqis will do that, God
الأصولية
willing.
والشريفة. سنلاحقهم
We
وسنجعل
will
شعوب
pursue them,
تلاحقهم.
and we will have their
سنجعل
people
محبي
pursue
الحرية
them.
والسلام
The
يلاحقون.
people who love peace and freedom
أنا
will pursue
مستعد
them.
لاستلام أسئلتكم.
سيد الوزير بالأمس تعرضت
Yesterday,
والتلفزيون هنا خلف هذا
TV and radio building was bombed. Today again, they were bombed.
مي الخنسة محامية لبنانية
May Al-Khansa, a Lebanese attorney,
طلب محاكمة الرئيس الأمريكي جورج بوش
presented a brief to have President Bush and Blair tried for war crimes.
عندما قال بأن 5 إلى 10 أيام بعدها ستحاصر قوات الأمريكية البريطانية بغداد. هناك لبس حول هذا الكلام وأن القوات الأمريكية البريطانية تبعد عن بغداد حوالي 140 كيلومتر.
Also, we're talking about the numbers of the soldiers that are going to be surrounding the cities.
قال أنا أتوقع
The defense minister said that I expect
أن هؤلاء
that
المجرمين
those criminals,
أعتقد أنه في راسهم صوت يعني لا يزالون يرتكبون الحماقات
they still,
وكمجرمين غزاة.
these criminals, the invaders, that he said I expect that if they
أن
insist
يتحاشوا أن لا يقبلوا معركة أن يتحاشوا المقاومة
on
العراقية في كل مكان.
avoiding the
هم
resistance,
يريدون أن يثبتوا شيء ما
they want to
أنهم
prove
يتقربون من تخوم بغداد.
that they are around
فنتيجة
Baghdad.
إصرارهم وإلحاحهم السيد وزير الدفاع يتوقع أنه إذا كان كذلك
Defense minister expects
لمقبرتهم
that this is going to be, there will be their grave
بين 5 إلى 10 أيام. هذا هو التوقع.
in about 5 to 10 days.
Minister, can I ask you a question?
Just a minute, because your colleagues, non-Arab media, they request that
Your colleagues who do not speak Arabic want me to repeat the numbers of the injured and killed. Baghdad was...
All right, we're going to jump out of this from the Iraqi information minister, and we want to bring in our Reem Brahimi, who's live in Jordan right now, to sort of analyze this and go through this. Reem, he said a number of interesting things. One of the most interesting, he mentioned Richard Pearl, who was an advisor to Donald Rumsfeld, who resigned over a financial controversy. And it's interesting because it obviously means that the Iraqis are following internal American politics.
Absolutely, Carol. They've been following internal American politics all along, and you could see that very often in the daily newspapers in Iraq, in editorials, a lot of very specific references to people like Richard Pearl, to people who, of course, have been seen as the hawks wanting to launch a war against Iraq, people like Paul Wolfowitz, for instance. They've been specified by name very specifically all along in newspapers. And what's interesting is that at a time like this, when they are being attacked, they still have these facilities and these abilities to follow exactly what's happening, to monitor what is being presented in the media. Another example of that, if you will, is a response that Mohammed Saeed al-Sahaf, Iraq's information minister, made to the allegations that, reports rather, that US-led forces had found some chemical protection gear for soldiers. The Minister of Information clearly had followed reports in the media on that and said, well, I know that they're saying that this is because we have weapons of mass destruction. This is absolutely not the case. Iraq has no weapons of mass destruction, but it's part of the basic gear of standard gear of every soldier. We might think that the US and Britain might want to use weapons of mass destruction, so this is why that equipment was there. So a big sign that they're following everything. And again, usual account of casualties and victims he presented. On the whole, the figure I noted here, he gave a total since the beginning of the war, Carol, and that number was 800 injured and 230 killed, or in his words, martyred is the word that he uses, that the Iraqi administration uses. Carol, back to you.
Going back to the Iraqis' observation of American internal politics, of course, the Iraqis seem to be putting their own spin on this, and this is being broadcast to the Arab world.
Absolutely, it's being broadcast to the Arab world. It's also a message a way of saying many things to the Arab world and to the region as a whole. It's a way of saying, if you were afraid of the power that these people had, look, we are in the right and we have been in the right all along. And also maybe a way of saying we know exactly what's going on, we follow what's going on, we're not as isolated as you think we are, despite the war, despite the siege, despite this attack.
Right, and I was just going to add that the reason for Richard Pearl's resignation was far different, according to American authorities, than the Iraqi information minister gave out.
Well, that's in a way almost irrelevant. I think the fact that they can point out to the fact that this person who has been, again, one of the people they see as having actively pursued a goal of achieving war in Iraq, well, they see this as a victory in itself. They see this as a victory of what they've been saying all along. They see his departure from his position, from his post, as a failure, and it's something that allows them to present it, to put their own spin on it, and to say to the people, you see, this is what happens to that kind of person. It's also interesting how they present what's happened, different battles that have been taking place. For instance, the minister spoke about Najaf. Now that is a southern town, a town to the south of Baghdad. Its majority population is a majority Shiite, a very big majority Shiite, because it's one of the towns that hosts one of the holiest shrines in Shia Islam for Shia Muslims. And he, the information minister, explained that he first of all denounced the United States, said they targeted civilian areas in the town of Najaf, and then he said that they used cluster bombings, and said that this entire attempt on the part of the Americans to get that city was a failure. He said it was met by the resistance of citizens, of Fedayeen, those people who are prepared to die for President Saddam Hussein, and of the Ba'ath Party members who are armed, as we well know. Carol?
Understand. Thanks for bringing us up to date and sort of getting into what we heard from the Iraqi information minister this morning, Reem Brahimi.
Also, it's interesting, early on in his speech, or in his talk, he really was stressing sort of what they would describe as sort of David and Goliath-like nature of this, sort of praising apparently alleged farmers by name, and then praising these alleged farmers for having rocket-propelled grenades, which he says were used to
right. He
target,
intimated that one farmer used a weapon to take out an American tank,
right,
and another took out a helicopter.
Right.
Don't know if that's true.
We shall see. We'll be right back. Have more coverage when we continue.
Hey, I'll get this. Besides, I get airline miles. With your business card? Huh.
What is your credit card doing for your small business?
You earn miles on everything you buy?
Yeah, from supplies to travel expenses.
The Citi Platinum Select Advantage Business Card. Call now and you could get 1 mile for every dollar you spend. Miles that may never expire. plus 10,000 bonus miles.
I use my miles for car rentals, hotels, on over 25 top airlines, even a well-earned vacation.
Plus, get benefits like account summaries, business discounts, online fraud protection, and more. Call now to request your card.
I'd like the City Advantage business card and 10,000 bonus miles.
And soon, your miles could take you almost anywhere.
Oh, Paris is great. And flying free? Makes it even better. Smart business decision.
The City Advantage business card.
Call now to request your card and 10,000 bonus miles.
CNN Tonight, voices of experience in a time of war. Legendary reporter Bob Woodward and veteran newsman Bob Schieffer. Plus bioterror correspondent Judith Miller and the latest from the front lines. Only on Larry King Live, CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
And good morning to you. It's 4:40 Eastern Time. You're taking a live look at Baghdad. It's 12:40 p.m. there, and you can see smoke on the horizon there. And according to Reuters, there have been 2 new explosions in the past hour or so. CNN has not confirmed that. Of course, earlier, a much more serious bombing by coalition forces.
Yeah, we're going to get more on that from Darren Kagan in Kuwait City in a little bit later on. But first, let's go to the map and give you a visual sense of where coalition forces are right now inside Iraq. You see the port city of Qasr. That is where that British ship with humanitarian supplies is expected today in a matter of hours, in fact. Coalition forces are tracking the ship so it doesn't hit any possible sea mines. Now, moving inland, coalition forces are also still on the move, still engaged in multiple places, in Basra, in Nasiriyah, and in Najaf. And in northern Iraq, U.S. troops are digging in at an airfield. There you see the pictures from about 24 hours ago or so, a little bit more than that now. Those are the troops, airborne troops, who parachuted in under the cover of darkness on Wednesday night. For more on that, the bombings in Baghdad, we're going to go to Darren Kagan, who is live in Kuwait City. Darren?
Yeah, Anderson, we're talking about some of the largest explosions that have been seen so far in this war that was dropped on Baghdad overnight, and some of the explosions that continue into today. The targets, the International Communication Center, the building there, buildings near the Information Ministry, all damaged. And I think I heard Carol mention there was clouds of smoke seen as high as hundreds of feet in the air over Baghdad from those explosions. What exactly was landing on Baghdad? Well, we're getting word from our embedded reporters. 10 cruise missiles came from ships in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. Also, at least 2 bunker buster bombs, as they're called, dropped on Baghdad. One of those, at least we've confirmed, is the GBU-37. That is a hardened warhead. It's designed to go ahead and penetrate underground bunkers. And apparently the aim here was trying to disconnect Saddam Hussein as he tries to go ahead and communicate with his command forces in the field. I want to get some perspective about what's happening between the difference between what you're happening when you see these military briefings that we carry live on CNN versus what you see in the field. And for that, we're going to bring in Terry McCarthy. He is the Los Angeles bureau chief for Time Magazine, but he's been in the region here for quite a few weeks and giving us our perspective. Welcome. Thanks for being with us. You're not just hanging out here in Kuwait City. You actually have made your way into Iraq, and I understand you saw a different picture of what you're seeing in the military briefings.
Yeah, we went across the border some days ago. It's quite clear there's a big gulf between what the Pentagon would like us to think is happening in the south and what's going on there. And this is not just from our observations, but even talking to some of the troops. We went up Route 8, which goes up towards Nasiriyah and then on to Baghdad, and they had stationed a few troops there on some of the bridges, but basically the road was deserted except for these convoys moving up. So at one stage we actually saw what turned out to be a very serious incident. Some kind of a mine went off on the side of the road, blew a British armored personnel carrier off the road, turned upside down. The British immediately arrived with tanks, shut the road down, went out to look for other potential hostile forces in the area. The result of that was that main road, this is the main supply road for the entire U.S. Army up in the front lines, was shut down for at least 3 hours. Nothing moved on that road until they cleared up that incident.
Now, you went in there, this was what, 1 or 2 weeks ago? How long ago?
No, this was like 5 days ago.
Oh, just 5 days ago. So was that before or after journalist Terry Lloyd was
It was
killed?
the same day. We heard about that while we were inside.
And since then, we're hearing about quite a few journalists, especially those that have chosen to go in a non-in-bed situation, coming into some dangerous situation. Would you go in again by yourself like that?
It's a difficult call. At the moment, it looks like no soft-skinned vehicle in southern Iraq is safe. I think what we're doing now, the non-embedded journalists, when they are going in, they're staying very close to military units. And even that, yesterday I was talking to somebody who was with some British commandos south of Basra. And while I was on the phone to her on the sat phone, an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade, went over her head. I heard the whoosh myself. So it's still quite dangerous there, and one has to proceed with extreme caution.
As we're able to see from our own journalists that are in the field, interesting just to talk to you, working for Time Magazine. What you do is so different from what we do on a minute-by-minute basis. We're following the war. Is it difficult to work for a weekly magazine and report on this war because it changes so quickly and so fast?
Well, that's right. The minus is that there's stuff happening early on in the week, which by the time we get to our print cycle is already old news. I guess the advantage that we bring to the party is we can maybe take a bigger look at the bigger picture insofar as we can work that out. We can put together reports from what we have in the field with our guys in Washington and so on. I know this week we're going to be looking at the failures and successes, what's going well with this war, because, it's not a complete failure. We've made a lot of advances up towards Baghdad. And then the failures that clearly things are not going as they predicted. So we're trying to get that bigger picture.
Bigger picture so you just don't get so focused on what's happening minute by minute. We will look forward to it. Thank you so much. Terry McCarthy, Time Magazine.
Thanks, Dr.
Number of journalists here in the Persian Gulf area. We'll be talking to many of them as we stay here. For now, we send it back to two of my fellow journalists, Carol and Anderson.
All right, Darren, thanks very much. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at what happened, dramatic pictures of what happened when humanitarian aid arrived in one Iraqi village when we come back.
Sings a classic country song. It's unforgettable.
I fall.
Presenting Anne Murray, Country Croonin'.
I can't stop love.
30 timeless country classics.
Put your sweet lips a little closer.
These are Anne's favorite classic country songs.
Are you lonesome tonight?
Get Anne Murray Country Croonin' on 2 CDs or cassettes.
Make the world go away.
You'll treasure this collection forever.
I bless the day I found you.
Please call now.
Call 1-800-306-5300 to order Anne Murray on 2 CDs or 2 cassettes for just $24.99 plus shipping. Or send check or money order to the address on your screen. Call now.
Welcome back. We're going to shift now to the humanitarian aid efforts that are going on in Iraq. As we said, a couple hours from now, we're expecting Qasr, that British ship, to arrive with some 200 tons of food and medicine and water. So we are following that story. That any time in the next couple hours we're expecting. We'll bring it to you as soon as we can. In southern Iraq, residents of one town were desperate for food and water yesterday. As Romilly Weeks reports, they pushed and they pleaded for aid that finally arrived. Take a look.
As soon as the army convoy reached Al-Zubayr, people started streaming out to meet them. Groups of young men and children ran to reach the first aid to be given out since before the war began. The situation was tense. The aim was to feed the people, but this was aid with an armoured escort. In this town, there'd been guerrilla fighting up until a few hours before. Within 15 minutes, a crowd of perhaps 1,000 had built up. Most seemed friendly. Those I spoke to said they were without electricity or running water and had only a few days of food stored. But some clearly didn't want us there. All were desperate to get to the supplies.
Stay there. No one knew what to expect here. The people here are clearly desperate for the food and water, and the army is struggling to keep control.
Order broke down completely as the crowd started grabbing boxes of water. It seemed like it might turn ugly, but the army lined up and managed to hold the crowd. Moments after these shots were taken, we had to stop filming.
Well, we've had to retreat out of the town with the army and the aid convoy. What I'm told happened is that local militia fighters started firing on the crowd. Everyone scattered in panic. No one was injured as far as we know, but presumably trading aid for bullets was not part of the plan. Romilly Weeks, ITV News in southern Iraq.
And we know that at this hour there's a lot of activity going on in and around Basra. It is a very confused situation, not exactly sure what's going on. Just a little while ago we heard from Christiana Amanpour. You talked to her.
Yeah, Christiana Amanpour is with the British troops there that are sort of surrounding the cities, at least on 3 sides of that city. And she reported that as civilians were trying to leave Basra, that the irregular forces of Saddam Hussein were actually firing into the crowds and driving the people back into the city. As you know, in past days, some civilians managed to get out, and the British troops were giving them some sort of humanitarian aid in the form of food packets and even radios.
Right, offering radios with the idea of helping them get information. People, that those radios would basically be disseminated back into the cities. People get information both on humanitarian relief and possible encouragement for any sort of uprising. I'm told, we were going to go to break, but I'm told we have Bob Franken on the line, who we lost a little while ago. Bob is in southern Iraq, as I remember, in a newly taken air base. Bob, what's happening where you are?
Your memory is pretty good, Anderson. It's southeastern Iraq. It is an air base that was taken several days ago, probably close to a week ago, and now the U.S. forces, coalition forces, including the British, want to set it up as what they call a forward air base. It's going to have significant operations from here. As a matter of fact, we arrived just a very short time ago, probably about an hour ago. We're the first TV crew to arrive. This is the first security force to arrive. We've also witnessed the first crew of A-10s. Those, of course, are the anti-tank jets. They plan to fly a lot of them from here as opposed to their home base because it is 150 miles closer to most of the action. As the wing commander had said, that will save them 300 miles. Same with the search and rescue operations. They have people here already, and this place is going to get very busy in the next several days. As you enter the base, remember now, of course, it was an Iraqi air base, you see right before the tarmac where we are a picture of Saddam Hussein. The pictures are everywhere, but there is one as you drive onto this tarmac, and of course, instead of seeing Iraqi military hardware, you now see a growing number of pieces from the United States military. When we first got here, there was a group of about 50 POWs sitting on the tarmac. Almost immediately after we came, they removed those POWs, and they've been taken to another site. As we know, they're trying to set up a POW camp some distance away, several miles away, but thus far have not had any success in finishing that up. We spent the evening there yesterday, and right now, all that is a desolate field, basically. In any case, this is going to become, as I said, a vital part of the operation, according to people with the military. It's going to take a couple of days to set up. There is no electricity like that. It is really quite a sight. It's an empty field. You see some fairly dilapidated hangars and a dilapidated air tower down the way. But for many members of the military and for us for a while, this is going to be home.
Well, Bob, as we've learned what is going on in northern Iraq, that newly taken airfield there, within some 24 hours, there already aircraft are coming in. So I imagine the base you're at, even though it's pretty empty right now, as you said, I'm sure within a short amount of time there's going to be a lot of activity happening there. I know you've just arrived. I know you haven't probably been able to collect your thoughts on this, but do you have any sense? Are you hearing anything about the type of airstrikes that are happening in southern Iraq now? Do you get a sense of how many or what percentage of them are to provide close air support? How many of them are still targeting particular sites? Do you have a sense of the breakdown there?
I don't have any sort of breakdown, have not been privy to the numbers, but I will tell you, as we were making this journey up here, which, as you might remember, took 3 days in fits and starts, we do know that air cover was called in with A-10s on occasion because one of the things that slowed us down was the sudden emergence of combat situations that would come up, but they would call in air support and also helicopters to try and clean out those pockets of resistance, and then we'd move forward. But I can't tell you exactly what I can tell you what they do expect here, and that is a whole bunch of A-10s that are going to be flying their deadly missions from here.
Yeah, and we've been hearing so much about that A-10, the Warthog. Walter Rogers, I remember, I think about 48 hours ago or so, where they were he often was talking about that Warthog was often called in to provide that close air support, both when they were crossing over the Euphrates Bridge for the first time, also later on when they were taking incoming fire. In fact, I don't know, Bob, you probably didn't hear Walter saying this, but I asked him how it felt when he heard those engines of the A-10 coming overhead to provide that close air support, and I believe what he said was hallelujah. That's what went through his mind, at least. I'm sure through the mind of a lot of soldiers as well. Bob Franken, thanks very much. We'll let you get back to reporting. We'll check in with you shortly. Carol?
Yeah, just one of the many voices we're hearing this morning from all around Iraq. I want to show you new pictures that we're getting out of Baghdad right now. Heavy smoke over the city. This is actually a mosque, and you can see the smoke behind it. We don't know if the smoke and the mosque are connected at all, but we do know that according to Reuters, there have been several explosions within the past 2 hours in Baghdad. And evidently, Reuters is reporting that the Iraqis are firing back with anti-aircraft fire. We also want to tell you that earlier last night, the United States dropped 2 bunker buster bombs on Baghdad, and they were specifically targeted to, among other things, the international communication system, and of course that operates Iraq's phone system. We're going to have much more on what's happening inside of Baghdad and what's happening inside of Iraq after we take a short break.
CNN Tonight legendary reporter Bob Woodward, veteran newsman Bob Schieffer, and bioterror correspondent Judith Miller, only on Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
I began losing my hair about a year ago. Is it ever going to stop? What causes it to fall out anyway?
Let's say I'm ready to do something about my hair loss. What are my options?
Why me?
It's hard to know what to do when you start losing your hair. That's where Bosley Medical comes in. For over 25 years, people have turned to us for answers to their questions about hair loss and hair restoration.
So what is natural hair restoration? Where does the hair come from? Is it permanent?
Does the hair actually grow?
To find out, just call this toll-free number. We'll send you this free video and comprehensive guidebook that give you the real facts about hair loss and the choices you have for dealing with it. Financing is available, so call now and discover how Bosley Medical has advanced the science of natural hair restoration, how they use your own living hair to fill in the thin spots. You'll also meet people who were once losing their hair and see what they looked like then and now.
But here's the big question. Do you think my barber will remember me?
Learn about all your options. Call now and get the information you need to determine if hair restoration is right for you.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
It is 4:56 Eastern Time. Welcome back to CNN's coverage of the war in Iraq. We want to take you to northern Iraq once again to check in with Ben Wiedemann. And Ben, yesterday at this time we were seeing American troops. Today it seems rather quiet.
Well, not altogether quiet. The day began just a few hours ago with 4 bombs being dropped on positions behind the Iraqi lines, about 10 to 15 kilometers. Not clear what they may have hit. Kurdish smugglers in this area are telling us that they have seen many artillery pieces and tanks at about that same distance. Now, I was just a moment ago looking at the Iraqi front lines through my binoculars, and certainly the Iraqi troops there don't seem particularly worried about the possibility of a strike. They're walking very casually between their positions, some assembled in groups of 6 or 7, really just seem to be hanging out. So if the U.S. is going to try to dislodge these troops on the ridge behind me with this kind of bombing, may take quite a while. Now, we've heard from other sections of the northern front, the 500-mile line dividing Kurdish and Iraqi forces, that there have been some advances. Kurdish forces in Chamchamal, that's a city outside the Kurdish city of Kirkuk, the Iraqi-controlled city of Kirkuk, saying that Iraqi forces have evacuated one of the major positions they occupied on the road to that city without any resistance. It may have been really just a tactical redeployment to the rear rather than an evacuation of those positions. Now, the U.S. troops continue to arrive in northern Iraq at the airfield at Harir, which is outside the Kurdish stronghold of Erbil. The precise number of Americans in the area is unclear, but we do know that, for instance, some have been sighted in the city of Suleimania, which is a city near the Iranian border. Meanwhile, one development in the city of Erbil, which is just about a half-hour drive from here, is that a large explosion went off about mid-morning in a garbage dump, sending up a large white plume of smoke. Now, according to the local Kurdish regional government interior minister, he says that he believes it was an attempt to imitate a chemical attack and to sow terror in the hearts of the local population.
All right, Ben Wiedemann, we'll get back to you reporting live from northern Iraq. We're going to start our next hour now.
Yep, we're covering all the story from all the angles. We'll be right back.
It is now 5 o'clock Eastern Time. I want to bring you up to date on the latest. Giant columns of smoke. You see them there. Could be seen at sunrise after thunderous explosions rocked Baghdad throughout the night. The coalition struck Baghdad with 2 satellite-guided bunker buster bombs and cruise missiles. Officials say the bombs, one of which weighed more than 2 tons, were dropped on a major communications and command center. At least 10 Tomahawk cruise missiles were fired from a Navy battle group in the eastern Mediterranean. Al Jazeera TV showed these pictures of a British drone that went down near Basra. The British Army and NATO used the Phoenix unmanned aerial vehicle to identify battlefield targets. No word yet on what caused the drone to crash. 12 U.S. Marines are reported missing after another day of fighting near Nasiriyah. Search teams have been combing the desert looking for them. 11 of the 12 are with the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Brigade stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And the siege of Basra does continue today, with British artillery homing in on Iraqi positions inside the city. An embedded reporter tells CNN the British commanders are getting good intelligence on what is happening inside the city and preparing a battle plan for routing out the remaining Iraqi forces. 30,000 soldiers with the Army's 4th Infantry Division based at Fort Hood, Texas, have begun shipping out to the Gulf. The Pentagon says they'll be followed by another 100,000 ground forces over the next month. And the Rolling Stones canceled concerts today and tomorrow in Hong Kong because of the spread of severe acute respiratory syndrome in Asia. The group's website says large concert crowds risk exposing more people to the highly contagious illness. U.S. officials say 51 cases of SARS has been diagnosed in the United States so far. And of course, we're bringing you live reports on several fronts in the war in Iraq. So here is what's coming up in this hour. Baghdad smokes and shakes at a bunker buster strike. Our Bill Hemmer has an update on the explosions in the Iraqi capital from Kuwait City. Also, our embedded reporters are taking you to the front lines in both northern and southern Iraq. And Iraqis desperate for food aid. A huge shipment is expected to arrive sometime today, and of course, we are tracking it. And good morning to you. Welcome back. You're looking at a live picture of downtown Baghdad as Operation Iraqi Freedom enters its 9th day. You can see haze over the city and smoke. We understand from Reuters a few explosions have gone on in the last 2 hours, but we're not sure on specifics as of yet.
And some major explosions overnight. Those 2 bunker busters, Carol, as you mentioned earlier. We're going to have more on that from Bill Hemmer shortly. It is 2 past 1 in the afternoon, Baghdad, 2 past 5 a.m. here on the east coast of the United States, Friday, March 28th. Good morning. I'm Anderson Cooper.
And I'm Carol Costello. Thanks so much for joining us. Time now for a look at stories that will be making news early today in our early briefing. President Bush will speak to the veteran service organizations at the White House this afternoon, and then he and the First Lady head to Camp David for the weekend. The Security Council is expected to vote today on a plan to resume Iraq's oil for food program. More than half of that country depends on this program. And Americans will take to the streets again today to voice their opinions about the war. There are both anti-war protests and rallies for the troops planned from coast to coast.
And we are following this story on the ground in Iraq from all over Iraq, not only the big bombings in Baghdad and northern Iraq. First, let's go to the map, give you a visual sense of where coalition forces are right now inside the country. You see there the port of Qasr. That is where the British ship with humanitarian supplies is expected today, over 200 tons or so. We are expecting that in the next couple of hours. Going to bring that to you as soon as we get it. Coalition forces are tracking the ship so it does not hit any possible sea mines. That's happening right now. Moving inland we go. Coalition forces still fighting, still in Basra, in Nasiriyah, and Najaf. A lot of action to talk about in the next hour. Also in northern Iraq. These are taped pictures, I believe, from about 24 hours ago when the paratroopers first arrived. U.S. troops digging in at an airfield. They parachuted under the cover of darkness on Wednesday night.
Okay, we want to bring you up to date about the bombing in Baghdad and what possibly are new explosions at the city. Let's go to Kuwait City for that and Bill Hemmer. Good morning, Bill.
Carol, hello. Welcome to Friday here. You're going to be hearing a lot about the weather today. For the first time in days, Carol, we have absolutely stunning weather here in Kuwait City. And we're told it's similar over the skies in Iraq. That means, according to military sources, that a large number of airstrikes may be on the uptick today as we again grow deeper in the day of Friday. And we're told a number of targets will be targeted in Iraq, including these Republican Guard divisions, the Hammurabi and the Medina, said to be the strongest of 6. Medina is southwest of Baghdad. Hammurabi is northwest of the capital city. We will track that throughout the day. We do know there have been explosions a short time ago in the Iraqi capital. Not quite sure, based on the information we're getting, where or what was targeted, but we do know what happened last night around 10 o'clock local time. 2 giant bunker buster bombs were dropped on central Baghdad. The Air Force describes these as bunker busters. One said to be a 4,500-pound bomb dropped by B-2 stealth bombers, satellite-guided bombs. Again, they struck around 10 o'clock local time. A large area shook. A thick haze enveloped the sky. Some of the largest explosions to date, according to some of the eyewitnesses there in the Iraqi capital. We're told a communications center was struck, and some buildings near the information ministry were damaged, possibly targeting Iraq's national communications network. We're told that communications center is what houses Iraq's telephone network, this along the east bank of the Tigris River. Reem Brahimi spent an awful lot of time in Baghdad. She is gauging reaction on the latest bombing from last night and also Arab reaction throughout the Arab world. And Reem, yet again, we have seen a large number of demonstrations in many of these capital cities. Good afternoon to you there. What is your gauge at this point?
Good afternoon to you, Bill. Well, for now, let's just talk about the reaction from Iraq, from the official reaction. At any rate, you may have seen earlier on Iraq's information minister, Mohammed Saeed al-Sahaf, denouncing those attacks, denouncing the United States for attacking what he said were just civilian areas. In particular, the minister made a few points talking to the press there. First of all, he saluted what he said were the heroes who destroyed the U.S. tank and brought down, in his words, the U.S. Apache helicopter. He also said that when the U.S. says it's hitting government buildings, well, it's hitting buildings with people in it. He said, does the U.S. think that just because they're government building, there's nobody inside? Well, there are people and there are civilians, there are citizens going about their business. As you know, Bill, a lot of the bombings took place overnight, but there's been also a whole morning of bombings on this Friday morning, which is a Muslim day of rest in Iraq. Now, the minister also denounced the United States, saying they targeted civilian areas in the southern town of Najaf and used cluster bombs. But he said that both in Najaf and in a lot of other cities, the US-led forces were met by resistance. He also said in response to a question by a reporter that the port town in the south of Qasr was still under Iraqi control. He said all the US media reports that it's not. Well, it is still under Iraqi control. The minister also gave a total number of injured and killed since the beginning of the campaign. 800 injured, that is 800 injured, he said, throughout Iraq, and 230 killed, or in his words, martyred. Now, as you know, all this, there's a lot of reaction to what's been happening in Iraq, in the Arab world, in the region as a whole. First of all, let me just show you this magazine, Bill. Magazine called Al-Watan al-Arabi, the Arab Nation. Baghdad, mother of cities, resist, calling on Baghdad, the mother of all cities, to resist. This is the front page of one of the magazines. So just giving you an idea of what the mood is like here. Back to you, Bill.
Reem, thanks. Reem Brahimi and Aman Jordan updating us from her perspective there. Meanwhile, back here in Kuwait, there could be good news for Kuwaitis. It's been almost 26 hours since an Iraqi missile was launched into Kuwaiti airspace. About 26 hours since we heard our last air raid siren. We are told through military sources that they may have found, contacted, and destroyed this launch site near the town of Basra that's been launching these Iraqi missiles here. At last count, I believe 11 penetrated the airspace here. Of the 11, 8 are said to be destroyed by Patriot missile batteries. Again, it's been quiet relative to the air raid sirens. Whether it stays this way or not, Carol, is something that we shall wait and see here. In the meantime, talk again in about 20 minutes. Anderson, back to you now at the CNN Center.
All right, thanks a lot, Bill. Look forward to it. You know, we've been following this story about humanitarian aid coming to Qasr. As we've been telling you all morning, we are expecting it really any time in the next couple of hours. A British ship is going to be arriving with that. More than 200 tons or so of aid expected. CNN's Becky Diamond is embedded on an Australian minesweeper, the HMAS Canimbla. She joins us now on the phone. She's been following this story for days now. Becky, what can you tell us?
Well, Anderson, it was a very exciting morning on board the Canimbla. I'm on what's called the forecastle. That's the forward deck of this amphibious ship. This ship has been tasked with coordinating the mine countermeasures in the northern Persian Gulf and in the waterway leading to Qasr. Now, because of possible mines that have been detected, the Sir Galahad, that's the British ship that's carrying humanitarian aid up to the port, had been delayed. And this morning, the ship came through, and it was a beautiful sight. There were a lot of sailors out on the forecastle taking pictures and talking and sort of celebrating the moment. They had worked very hard to clear a channel in this waterway, and it was give or take for a few days as to when this ship would set sail. And the ship went along with a convoy of coalition ships. It was led by a British minesweeper, then the Sir Galahad followed, and then there was a Kuwaiti, an American, and a British patrol boat following as well. Anderson?
Yeah, it has been quite an exciting couple of days, I imagine, for you, what with minesweepers, divers in the water, even dolphins, everything going, trying to hunt out for these mines. Do you have a visual on the Galahad, this British ship that is going to be coming in with this aid? I'm just trying to get a sense of where you are. Can you see it? Do you know when it's going to arrive?
I saw it pass by the HMAS Canimbla this morning. It was about 10 o'clock my time. That's about 3 hours ago. It came within about 1,000 feet of our starboard side. We are closer to the bottom of this waterway. They say the waterway it will take the Sir Galahad about 6 hours to transit. And when we saw it, it was probably a fifth or a sixth of the way through at most. So I'm expecting it'll arrive in Qasr sometime around 2 o'clock local time. And we're, of course, 8 hours ahead of Eastern time. Anderson?
And Becky, I imagine the mission continues. I imagine you just keep sweeping for mines in the coming hours, in the coming days and weeks. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Of course, the concern is rising that possible mines could be in this waterway. There's no evidence to show that there are mines here. There have been some objects that have been detonated by Australian Navy divers that contained explosives. Now, that doesn't mean it's a mine. It could be an ordnance dropped from a prior war. But the fear of possible mines, coupled with a discovery last week of 86 buoyant and ground mines on an Iraqi tug and barge just north of here, has raised the level of concern. And this ship is having all the sailors that were sleeping below the waterline move up to the hangar deck. Anderson?
All right, Becky Diamond, good on you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Carol?
And we're pulling in more pictures of Baghdad this morning. We want to show you these pictures from Al Arabia TV. This is out of Saudi Arabia, and you can see smoke in the skies. We're not sure what exactly is on fire, if anything, but we do know that one of the heaviest bombardments came overnight from coalition forces who took out a number of targets there.
And we should point out, it looks like that building is on fire, but I think that's an incorrect perception.
Right.
I think that building is simply in the foreground. I think the smoke is a good deal in the distance behind, just judging.
It looks that way, but we're really not sure right now. In case you've been wondering, right now that we know that 90,000 troops are now in Iraq, 75,000 of those troops United States troops.
I think it is a positive step. I think it ties in with the main aim and the objective of the coalition, which is to encourage Iraqis to basically take over. I would be in favor of this rather than a military administration. We are Iraqis who are brought up in Iraq and lived in the West as well, and together with Iraqis inside we can help redevelop and reconstruct Iraq based on democratic principle and have real civil society.
And well, that is the question, I suppose. How much involvement will Iraqis who are still in the country, who are still in Baghdad and elsewhere throughout the country, and perhaps who are part of this regime? I mean, we've heard a lot from U.S. administration officials saying that, you know, there is an Iraqi civil bureaucracy that could perhaps be utilized in a post-Saddam Hussein regime. Is that going to be a difficult dance, figuring out who is compromised by the past regime and who has not been?
It is not difficult. Obviously, we are not here to throw everything away and restart all over again. We have to work with the existing networks. What we need to do is we need to train and we need to develop people and we need to